From time to time, Quick Tech Productions focuses on items we commonly use here in the agricultural industry in Saskatchewan. That's why this week, we are focusing on the Saskatchewan Graintruck. Now, Graintrucks are found on farming operations all across Canada and the US, but for this segment, we're going to be focusing on the Saskatchewan Graintruck. Now, there's a specific regulation that pertains to all grain trucks here in Saskatchewan. Following are a few examples pulled directly from that regulation. The SGR requires that all engines that power said grain trucks must leak a minimum of 4 liters, or about 1 gallon if you're in the US, of oil per day. Of course, the window is not allowed to roll up or down. It must be stuck at the halfway position, giving the Tomcat access to the cab of said truck so it can piss all over it. Battery covers are not allowed on Saskatchewan grain trucks because they get in the way of the morning ritual of having to drag out the battery charger and boost the f***ing thing. Shit! The SGR requires that all Saskatchewan grain trucks have securely mounted high-fidelity speakers. Said speakers must be accompanied by a professional install job on an aftermarket deck. If you do not have morettes, you can use electrical tape as well. To the untrained eye, this looks like a bent bumper, but this is actually an agricultural technician's initiative to reduce our carbon footprint by increasing aerodynamics on the grain truck. Now, as you can see here, the limited edition models must have a diff lock and also air conditioning, neither of which have ever been allowed to work. Now, along with your air conditioning not working, it is also prohibited for your defrost motor to work, so that when you're in a late harvest in the fall and it's starting to snow because Trudeau's f***ing carbon tax hasn't fixed anything, you have to mount a propane heater on the passenger seat by seat belting the bastard in. Furthermore, with your defrost motor being prohibited from working, it is recommended that you carry your pal with you to use it to scrape the windshield, seeing as how Trudeau has made it useless to have it for any other f***ing reason. Well-maintained and waterproof tarps are a highly integral part of the regulation. There is a subsection that exists in the regulation for tarp crank handles in which the entire saddle or the pin for it must be completely missing from the operation. The only securement device you're allowed to use in place of this is a bungee cord, baler twine, the agricultural technician's right hand, number 9 wire, or in the most of extreme situations, you can use the belt off of your pants. Startup procedures. Startup includes pulling the choke to full, saying a prayer that the truck will start. Please, Lord, let this dirty bastard start. Giving the throttle just a slight pump. And then trying to start the bastard. Come on, baby. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo! She's alive, boys! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! As indicated in the Saskatchewan grain truck regulation, tire tread depth is not allowed to exceed 2/32 of an inch. Only 2 types of air fresheners are allowed in the Saskatchewan grain truck, and that's the new car scent and Royal Pine, neither of which are allowed to smell like anything other than cat piss. And of course, according to the SGR, all shifter boots must have a hole in them, not only so you can keep an eye on the temperature of the transmission and see if the bastard starts glowing red or not, but to give mice a hole to access the cab so they can build a home in the defroster. Backup lights, according to the SGR, can be located on the truck, but they are not allowed to have a bulb in them. It's highly important, however, to leave the mounting bracket there because you can put your mobile device on top of it to use in a pinch. Do not back over your mobile device or it gets very expensive and you have to come up with some kind of story to tell people how you lost it. There's also a subsection in the regulation that states that lights may only not be in their proper receptacle if they are non-working and said receptacle is being used for a securement device. Said light must be removed from said receptacle by running into something with said grain truck. Ensuring that your license plate is bent up gives you 2 advantages. Number 1, you're not going to catch it on the auger when you tip up the box. And number 2, the police will probably not figure out that the grain truck's not registered anyways. Not only are you not permitted to wash the windshield of a Saskatchewan grain truck, but it's also required that it has at least 2 raspberries directly in the line of the sight of the driver. The regulation also states that if your windshield wipers do work, they must not have rubbers on them so that you have to drive blindly in a mad scramble back to the Quonset when it starts raining and the tarp won't roll. Only 1 of the 2 fuel tanks are allowed to be usable to hold fuel. The other one is required to turn into a complete sprinkler if you put fuel in it. There's also a subsection of the fuel tank that requires at least one worker on the farm to pick it up once a year so that everybody remembers that you do not use that fuel tank. Saskatchewan grain trucks are allowed to have a 2-speed axle, but the 2-speed axle is prohibited from working to make shifting next to impossible for the agricultural technician. Yeah, come on, baby. Whoa, there we go. According to the regulation, all grain trucks are only allowed to have a muffler if said muffler has a massive hole in it and it is mounted securely using chains. Of course, if you don't have chain, number 9 wire is a perfectly acceptable substitution. Fun fact about the Saskatchewan grain truck. The Saskatchewan grain truck is responsible for teaching Saskatchewan prairie boys how to train for doing the heel toe at the top of the hall during a dance. Oh, don't stall on me, baby. Come on now. There we go, there we go, there we go. According to the Saskatchewan grain truck regulation, all residents of Saskatchewan are required to name their grain trucks. Following is an example. Now, a lot of people ask Quick Dick where Blue Ball gets his name from. Well, Blue Ball is named on a thing called a family tradition. Let Quick Dick explain. We got Blue Ball's grandpa, old Wrinkly Ball there. Wrinkly Ball's a 79 Ford classic grain truck. Yeah, then we got Blue Ball's dad, Old Ball here. Man, it's a state-of-the-art unit, 1993 Aeromax. Woohoo! And you're all like, Quick Dick, where are you going with this? Well, folks, there's only 2 times a year that the whole family comes out and gets together, and that's during seeding and harvest. Now, all farmers come down with the same condition when they're not spending enough time in the bedroom and all of it in the field. And that's, you get wrinkly, old, blue balls. Hey, Blue Ball. See? Makes sense. This is Quick Dick signing off, reminding you if you have to use a truck to move crops on your operation, make sure they adhere to the Saskatchewan grain truck regulation. We'll catch you next time.